This finding exposes the racism of media images that depict drugs as mainly an inner-city problem. These false images help build support among whites for expansion of the prison system. As a result, the social fabric is damaged for white communities as well, because public resources are directed toward incarcerating the most marginalized members of society rather than developing real solutions to the myriad problems posed by alcohol and drug abuse. Prison punishes independent thinking and action. It promotes the violent resolution of personal conflict and breaks apart the bond of friends and family. Prison fosters dependency, idleness, violence, and the deterioration of human relationships, all of which make reintegration into freedom much more difficult. Ex-prisoners are inevitably suspects in the eyes of the local police and are therefore detained, questioned, jailed, and held at high bail whenever suspects are needed for unsolved crimes, all further disrupting potential employment. With the nation's inmate population increasing at a rate of more than 1,227 prisoners per week, prison construction is booming. The Federal Bureau of Prisons is now engaged in what it terms the largest prison expansion program in history. Nearly 200 prisons are currently under construction at a cost of more than $4.3 billion. Worse, according to the Clark Foundation, construction costs, which alone constrain a state's budget, make up only 6% of the total cost of planning, building, financing, operating, and maintaining a new prison over 30 years. Dang. Prisons have an economic downside that is seldom addressed. Correction budgets deplete state coffers. For example, individual towns may gain some jobs from the $400 million Connecticut intends to spend on 4,600 new prison cells. At the same time, however, almost every city in the state is having to slash its school expenditures due to statewide cutbacks. By contrast, the amount of direct losses to individuals, households, banks, and other businesses due to crime is approximately $10 billion per year. In other words, for every dollar directly lost by victims of crime, we spend about $8 to apprehend and punish the perpetrators. Prisons take on another face if one views them as generators of profit. Some of those who profit from the business of imprisonment are easy to identify, like architects. According to the chair of the American Institute of Architecture Criminal Justice Committee, there are now over 100 firms specialized in prison architecture. The corporate world is extensively involved with prisons. Prisons are the #1 industry in America after war. Actually, in many cases, the two industries overlap. From architects to academics, from food service vendors to healthcare firms, from corrections bureaucrats to psychologists and social workers, there's a lot of money being made from the proliferation of prisons. This profit rate was made possible by the low level of prisoner wages between 0.23 cents and $1.15 an hour. Prisoners in Delaware, meanwhile, helped save the state $25 million by working for 15 cents an hour constructing a new prison. Wow. Private firms are attracted to the prison labor pool because prisoners are legally denied rights that free workers enjoy. They cannot unionize, they do not have to be covered by workers' compensation, and their health care is subsidized by the state. They are not covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. For decades, U.S.-based corporations have been moved abroad to avoid high domestic wage rates as well as labor and environmental regulations. Now, such factors as an increasing cost of overseas labor, the expense of relocation, and the shipping expenses involved have caused some manufacturers to reorganize that American prisons, with their abundant supply of labor, are an attractive alternate for foreign-based production. Expanded prison labor can decrease private sector work release or ex-offender programs, since companies have more to gain from keeping a trained prisoner in the prison labor force where he or she has no rights. Private prison industry can actually contradict the goals of rehabilitation. To make prison work profitable, prison officials are asked to minimize programming interruptions by suspending treatment, education, and vocational activities to accommodate industry desires for an 8-hour workday. Damn. The president of the National Corrections Corporations of Santa Fe, New Mexico, makes the case for private prisons in his company's promotional literature. Let's say it's a 150-bed jail at 100 inmates, charged at a rate per inmate per day. You break even. At over 100 beds, you make a modest profit. If you can get up to 95% capacity, it is possible to make a good profit, like a motel, which is usually only about 68% full. When prisons are public property, taxpayers must approve the issuance of bonds to finance their construction. Private financing, however, requires no public approval, even though the public will ultimately pay. Nonetheless, in Jefferson County, Colorado, voters twice rejected a bond issue for a county jail. Construction of the facility was then turned over to the private interest, and the $30 million construction bond was underwritten by E.F. Hutton.